Hey everyone, and welcome to today's story session, Forging Your Own Path. I'm Nikki Coble, the director of Catalyst Story Institute and occasional supervising producer of the festival. And today we have an incredible guest with us. This is Emily Schmidt. She's a comedy writer as well as a writer-producer of Ghosts on CBS. So excited to have you here today. And for those who may not know, she is also a WGA captain. So welcome, Emily.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. So I had like a reason to put on makeup and pants today, and that was exciting.
The pants is the big deal. That's when you know that it's an important day.
I mean, they're not even on camera, and I'm
We
wearing
have
them.
arrived. I feel that. I feel that vibe of pants. I could let everyone guess as to whether or not I'm wearing them. But beyond that, I mean, there is a curtain for a reason, right? But welcome. How are you in
Thank
this
you.
in this tenuous and important moment in the industry?
Yeah,
How
yeah,
are you?
hanging in there, hanging in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were back in the room for season 3 of Ghosts for about 3 weeks and 1 day. And we didn't know that Monday night if we would be coming into the office the next morning, and we're just waiting on information. And so sort of an abrupt exit. And we're all sad. We want to get back to work, but it's a very important time. And,
Of course.
these are issues that feel, almost existential to the, career of writing for television and film. So, we're sticking in there.
Yeah, it is a challenging moment. I'm sure anybody who's following what's going on or has any investment in what's going on, whether you're a WGA member or a sister union member or just kind of eating popcorn and watching it all unfold, I don't think many people know how many people it affects. That it's crucial for everybody to be negotiating for what their future pay will be and making sure that that's fair and making
Yeah.
sure that access to rooms is continuing to expand and not contract. Um,
Yep.
can you speak a little bit to what it's like to be a working writer during a strike where you are weighing those two principles at the same time? I know you said just a little bit of that now, but
Yeah.
knowing what the principles are and knowing what's at stake, right? Because it's difficult to be out of work for the moment, but it's also important for the future trajectory of every artist.
It's incredibly important, and it's interesting to be in a position where I am sort of working on a dinosaur in the industry. They're like
Yeah.
clinging to this idea of a 22 episode season, broadcast residuals. There are only a few shows left that have that model. And so many writers have been in a situation where they're having to get staffed multiple times over the course of a year, which is really hard to do, and are not getting residuals for their work on streaming, and it's just become untenable. I mean, compare that with the cost of living in Los Angeles, and it's very hard to actually make a living right now as a writer and
Yeah.
as an actor, as a director, as all of our folks in IATSE. Like, everyone is sort of struggling with this newer business model of streaming, and I think that needs to be reconciled because someone's making money.
Of course, of course. And certainly the aspect of AI is such a massive issue and question. This is not necessarily new territory, but it's the first time that there's a moment to address what that trajectory might be. And rather than go into the details of that, I would love to just underline why the human element of an actual human writer is so important and what each individual's authentic voice contributes to a process like this.
Right.
So maybe we can start with where you started, how you became a writer and what that trajectory was to get to Ghost today.
Yeah. So I grew up right outside Minneapolis in St. Louis Park, and always enjoyed coming up with stories, but really didn't find like a comedic voice until I would say like junior high. I got really obsessed with SNL, like taping them on VHS, like
Oh yeah.
bringing them to sleepovers, like not allowed to miss a live episode. um, Wrote fan letters to the whole cast. Was very into SNL, and as a result started doing improv first at Stevie Ray's in Minneapolis, and then also at the Brave New Workshop, and then later at Huge, and just got really interested in using comedy to tell stories, find characters, that it was just very, very fun for me. And then I ended up going to NYU for TV writing. And in high school, I was obsessed with New York and was like, I'm actually a New Yorker. I know I seem like a Minnesotan, but I'm a New Yorker. And my whole bedroom was like pictures of Times Square. And I was like, that's New York. And that's where I'm supposed to live. And then got to NYU and very quickly was like, I'm the most Minnesotan person that could possibly exist. I was like,
I think we all felt that way. I'm from New
yeah,
England, and I was like, I'm gonna be there. And then I went, there's so many people. Oh my God.
yeah. I was like a
Yeah.
17-year-old, like lost on the subway, this like 6 foot tall 17-year-old being like, I don't know anyone here. So I actually started going to see SNL on the weekends. I had no friends, nothing in the city. And so I would sleep on the street for SNL tickets. And I think I went to 18 or 20 episodes my freshman year. I just did it. I did it hard.
Wow.
And it was such a it was like a fulfillment of a dream to like be there. And I got to know like the cast would always talk to me because there's like a core group of people who would do this. And I think I was on the edge of like the less unhinged, more hinged as it were. And so they would always talk to me and I'd be like, hey, good show. And they're very kind. And that's actually how I met Kay Cannon, who was married
Incredible.
to Jason Sudeikis at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and staff writer on 30 Rock. And she would always just talk to me about working at 30 Rock. And I'm like, I'm studying TV writing. And all of my friends were like, stop doing this. Like,
It's
if
not
you
a good
ever,
look. It's not cute.
yeah, they're like, if you ever want to work in comedy, you need to stop like lurking around Rockefeller Center. But I just felt so passionate and excited about the process and just wanted to be there. And so I just kept doing it. Stopped a little because of the 07, 08 writer strike,
Oh,
actually.
yeah.
Yeah, had to like
Mhm.
find other things to do in New York. But kept in touch with Kay a little bit. And then when I actually moved back to Minneapolis for a couple of years, did improv after I graduated, and then moved to LA and was sort of spinning my wheels here, doing improv, but unsure of how I was going to really break in. And then I saw that Kay sold Girlboss. So I sent her an email that was like, congratulations. And then thought, what the heck, might as well. I was like, P.S. if you need a writer's assistant. She was like, I do, you're hired. So that was.
I love new to New York you. I adore her. I'm rooting for her. I think she's fantastic. I love this story.
It paid off in a way that no one could have expected, but really always felt true to what I was supposed to be doing. Yeah, I got that email in a Trader Joe's parking lot that I got.
I love it.
Yeah, I went back in and got wine.
As you should have. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think that's so specific to what we're talking about, that you wouldn't prescribe lurking around SNL and intentionally befriending somebody. It was organic, and it was to do with who you are.
Yeah.
And that wouldn't necessarily be the prescribed recipe for someone else. And I think that's what can be maddening about this business when you're trying to figure out, well, how did she do it? How'd they do it? How did anybody get in? I want to do that thing.
Yeah.
And it's more about intuition, I guess, is what you're saying.
Yeah, and really staying excited and following what you're passionate about. I think there's sort of a vibe, I think, in comedy too, that it's like not cool to be a fan, or I don't know, that people are a little bit more guarded about their excitement for things. And I don't know. I followed that. Granted, I was like 17, 18, like approaching people. I wasn't like, I don't know. It felt appropriate and organic, but I I really am glad I didn't listen to people who were like, this is not cool.
Well,
Um,
because there's also something where people say everyone's advice is filtered through their own limitations. And so
mhm.
that might not have been the right thing for them, and it would have been awkward for them, and it would have been damaging for them. But for you, it wasn't because
Right.
of who you are.
Yeah, yeah, and what I was excited about and, that I genuinely SNL was a dream for a long time and, obviously didn't end up going that route, but was just passionate about being around that space and learning and watching. And it was definitely from a place of respect and
Yeah.
reverence for this institution. So
Hmm.
yeah, and then being a writer assistant on Girlboss was, like, such an amazing experience, and I feel like Kay really made that happen and made me a part of the room, and
Yep.
trusted me, and so that was huge and very fun.
Yeah, and open the door for you to be on the other side of the operation there, right?
Yeah.
Which is so exciting. How did you, if you fast forward, how did the ghost job come about?
So, after Girl Boss, Kay was going to Atlanta to direct the movie Blockers, and she just asked if I wanted to come along. And I didn't really know what that meant or what my role would be there. And usually, I need to like have all the information to say yes to things, and really have to like weigh everything. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to Atlanta for 2 months. What does that even look like? What does that mean? But I just said, yeah, of course, I'll go do that. And so ended up being like an on-set joke writer for that movie. She had me come to set and basically learned what that role looks like. It's kind of my first like film experience. And so after that, got back to LA and was like back to ground zero. Girl Boss had been canceled. I didn't have reps. I started working as an assistant for a producer at CBS, Katie Krentz, who was a wonderful person, and I was not good at that job. I was like past the point where I was going to be a really good assistant, and was very worried about where where staffing was going to come from.
Mm.
Um, and actually ended up a friend who I actually knew through a high school friend, very sort of random, said, "Oh, I know someone who's going to be running a Netflix family multicam. Do you want me to send your pilot?" And I was like, "Of course, always." But I'm like, "That's not really a show that I would typically write for. But it's good to get my stuff out there, and I don't have reps, so I'm sure this is not going to amount to anything." And I remember feeling good about just sending it. And I was like, "Well, at least I did that." And I actually got staffed on that show just without reps. Those showrunners liked my pilot enough that they brought me on as a staff writer, and that was for No Good Nick on Netflix. And again, like not a show that I would typically be like, I got a staff on that. Was not my experience, but ended up being like the perfect room to be a staff writer in for me. I got to be like a jokes person in that room, and it was not as intimidating because everyone was so kind, and it was a different kind of show, not as like comedically cutthroat, which made it really fun.
Mm.
And got repped then shortly after that. And then when that ended, I sold a pitch with a friend to ABC Studios, and that sort of upped my street cred a little bit, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah.
And my agent helped me get staffed on Welcome to Flatch and then on Ghosts.
Incredible.
And both of those shows, those showrunners knew Kay Cannon. They knew other people I'd worked with. They always sort of cross-check and make sure you're not, an unhinged person. And so again, those connections like continue to help me in my current job.
That's incredible. I love that. And I talking about the road to getting staff, if you're paying attention and you're watching, so far we've covered staying true to who you are, following your intuition, taking leap of faith, right? You said you normally need all the details, and then you were like, you know what, I think I'm actually going to do this anyway. And then
Yeah.
also stepping outside your comfort zone. So I think we've done quite well for the first 15 minutes.
You
Um,
just have to do that.
yeah,
And then
you're welcome. The end. Um, on the road to getting staffed, I think, as you're saying, it's important because not everybody has the same background, right? There are playwrights that come to it. There are people that are coming to it from a comedy writing aspect. Can you speak a little bit to the road to getting staffed in terms of the way that you stand out to representation isn't by matching somebody else's trajectory. It's definitely about being true to who you are in your own voice. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. I will say I've pretty much consistently been the only person in the writers rooms that I've been in that has like a degree in TV writing.
Right.
Um, it,
Fascinating.
some folks went to film school, but a lot of people have just backgrounds in other things. A lot of times, TV writing is like a second career for people, and that is actually really helpful because we're not writing about television and making TV. We're writing about the world, and
Right.
the world experience that you can bring to a room is almost as important as your ability to write a story.
Hmm.
And when showrunners are putting together a room, they're trying to piece together the ingredients they need for a successful show. And that does not always mean, everyone that checks all of these boxes.
Right.
So I think it's a lot of people are worried like, oh, I didn't like do these things in my past in order to like put me in this room. But like, actually you probably did. Like
Right.
you went to law school, or if you went and like backpacked around Europe or worked at Starbucks, or, all of those things come together to be really appealing for specific rooms, because all we're doing is sitting in a room and telling our stories.
Right.
Um, it's not all we're doing. I shouldn't say it that way,
It's as easy
but
as that, kids. Yeah, but
that's a
it's
lot.
it's basically passing everything through the lens of your own experience, and
Mhm.
that's the element, if I may say, that AI can't do,
Yeah,
is the filter of the human experience, right? What is it like for you to entertain in the room as someone from Minnesota? What childhood is versus someone who was a city kid, right?
yep,
Or
exactly.
every single aspect of your experience, you feeling like you belong in the community of the SNL world might not have been everybody else's
Right.
new to New York City experience. That's why I find that fascinating. I want to just mention that those watching, Kelly did say, love your show.
Oh,
And
thank you.
I'd love to take that into a conversation about the dynamics of the writer's room you're currently in. What do you feel like your superpower is in that room? What are the assets that you're bringing to the room dynamic?
As a Minnesotan, it's hard to answer that. I have to like put
I
aside
know.
that Minnesotan like humility
Yep. Because you're like
answer.
superpower. No, no, no. We're not going to discuss that. I won't
Oh
even
gosh, no,
entertain
no
that.
way.
Oh gosh. No.
No superpower. Maybe a bun cake. I I feel like I am a jokes person in that room. Um, a lot of times people separate themselves from like jokes or story. And it's like, okay, we all do all the things. But I think people lean more towards one or the other as like their go-to strength.
Hmm.
Um, and I feel I'm helpful in rewrites. The way our process is very collaborative in that room. A writer may go off and write their episode, like a draft to go off of, but a lot of times we write as a group. Um, and definitely rewrite as a group. And so I feel like I am helpful with jokes. And then there are people in the room that come up with like fully fleshed out B stories. Just they can just rattle off like 5 of them, and I'm incredibly impressed and amazed and intimidated.
Yeah.
So and then they also, there are folks that are like, oh, I really freeze when I'm expected to punch up a joke. And so you see where, okay, you don't have to be a 10 at all things.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's so important because I don't think everybody thinks about it that way. Usually, we find ourselves with an idea of our own if we're the genesis of our own work, and it's more of an indie aspect. And we kind of see that through and we wear many hats. And hopefully, along the way, we have the good sense to involve other people to kind of punch it up or to make it the best that it can be. But I think sometimes people forget that TV writing is a team sport. You know, Aaron Sorkin, all the great people who we love to watch, they have a team. And
Yes.
there are conversations where those things are being challenged, or sounding boards that things are being bounced off of. And it's such an important part of the process to kind of look at it from all angles and poke holes in everything, and or level it
Exactly.
up, right?
Yeah, that's also why I feel like this time is such an important fight for the guild because,
Yeah.
writers' rooms have gotten smaller and smaller. Staff writers are less likely to be hired right now. It's harder to like build a deep bench of TV writers, and I feel like that is such a unique important component of TV writing is that group of people saying, hang on, that's actually not my experience. And I identify with this character in this way. And like, let's talk about how we might be able to make that a more authentic experience on the page, or even just starting with a joke that can get better and better and better as like voices are chiming in. It's essential.
Also, I wanted to make sure I highlight Jenny's beautiful conversation. See, you're going to make this Minnesotan very uncomfortable, but I agree with you, Jenny, because it's like,
Well,
oh gosh, oh man,
thank
is it?
you. I gotta leave now,
I
but
gotta
thank you.
go. um, but I do think that what's beautiful is also the improv background that you talked about, the power of yes and in a room, right? Keeping the energy positive, keeping things moving forward in the conversation, and never feeling like you're negging what someone is saying, but going, yes. And I think this also trying to get toward the positive idea as opposed to, no, that's not it. No, that's not it. Right.
Yeah, it's an incredible instinct to hone of just saying yes because, something that people will say in rooms is you want to pitch positive. So if you find that something is not working, it can feel helpful in the moment to say, by the way, like this is bumping me. The story actually doesn't make sense there. Thank you. I've contributed
Yes.
some wisdom, when really you need to attach a solution to that bump, or, you need to have a pitch on there of how we're going to fix it. And so I feel like having an improv background, your brain is sort of trained to keep things moving forward and
Yeah.
to make things work. Not to say that you have to do improv in order to do that, but I think it might make that happen a half step faster.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not just sitting there being like, you're welcome, it doesn't work, and thank you,
Good
best
luck
of
with that.
luck. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And while we unpack that a little bit further, I do want to encourage anybody watching, if you have questions for Emily, we have a time for some questions from the audience, and I'm seeing a lot of thumbs up and hearts in the in the comments and things. So if you have any questions about her path or her life on the show, I do want to give you time to ask those questions. So please feel free to type them in the comments, and we will air them. But in the meantime, that yes and um, being an organic, that's not the word I want to use. I think it's about being instinctual, having built that process, focusing on something else, focusing on spontaneously crafting comedy and situations,
Yeah.
bringing that to the room. Do you ever find that anybody can't get on that horse of yes and in a room? Where, I mean, we like to think that all writers' rooms are harmonious that we've ever been in, but sometimes there's challenges. There's dynamics with showrunners, and there's times when you're on set and something's not working, and people have to kind of pull that together quickly.
Yeah.
How do you navigate the challenging times when maybe the team isn't gelling?
I honestly feel like sleeping on it solves a lot of problems. I feel like there are times when all the rooms I've been in have like spun out into later hours, and we're getting dinner and we're like, oh my God, we need to solve this. Either the network has come in and said, actually, we don't like Act Two. And you're like, okay, thank you. Thank
Great.
you.
Cool, cool,
um,
cool.
appreciate that feedback. Or, we're stuck on a joke, or there's two different paths to ending a story, and we can't figure out what is going to be most satisfying for these characters. And I think there is a lot of power in like stepping away, because you really are so tuned in the room. You're on for 8 hours and
Hmm.
thinking for 8 hours, and I feel like, not the hardest job in the world, but can, it almost takes time to recharge, to solve that, and I think
Hmm.
a lot of times when we're working on our own projects, we can really beat our heads against a wall and be like, "I'm gonna sit here until I have the solution." And I think that works for some writers, but a lot of times you need to, like, give yourself that grace to, like, go take a shower, go take a walk, watch a movie, and, you'll often sort of break through that challenge.
Yeah, I think taking those pauses, moments to reflect, changing energy, whatever that shift is. I've been sitting and I'm grinding against this wall. I need to move, or I've just been staring at my screen and now I need to change the view. I need to zoom out and maybe think about something adjacent that will help motivate and turn the wheels a little bit, in a different direction rather than just kind of banging your head against the rock for a long time.
Well, and exactly, and I'll just say quickly, I I was working on a script where I had written a play actually for the Minnesota Fringe Festival, and was trying to turn that into a pilot, and it was like really challenging for me, like really like gear grinding of like, how am I going to format this? And finally, I just like took a break and got really obsessed with ancestry.com and like went down this huge like rabbit hole and was like, oh man, I wish I could meet my great grandma, like all the things I would say to her. And then in 4 days, ended up writing a pilot sort of based on that like excitement. And
Hmm.
that is still the script that's being sent around for meetings. I feel like that is, I mean, I sent a couple samples for Ghosts, but I feel like that's one that stood out that got me staffed on Ghosts. It's the script that got me my first job. And I was like mad at myself for writing it because I was like, no, 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 I'm supposed to be doing this other thing.
Right.
And so really like following that instinct, there's no wasted time when it comes to writing, I feel like.
That good student energy can get us in a lot of trouble of, staying task oriented and focused. I want to share what Jenny is asking. Empathy is magic and avoid hangry. I think those are very important points we've made. Have you experienced the magic of passing around food in a spent room?
Oh, the excitement of table fries, like arriving, like the excitement of like doing a coffee run and like our wonderful PA coming in with coffee. Yes,
Yeah.
snacks and food are, I mean, they're essential to my process. But,
Course. Well, it also
um,
feels, descended from the gods at just the right moment where you need to be inspired. I think that's also important. The energy of a room is
mhm,
going to waver over the
yeah,
course of a day, over the course of how much coffee you've had, over the course of whether or not this episode is being cracked in a way that we're all in agreement, right? And
yeah,
so being able to separate that from, how many calories you're burning at the same time, food goes a long way. Food and coffee
yeah.
probably go a long way towards solving those problems.
Well, and
I
I feel
want
like there are even places that we can't order lunch from anymore because everyone will get tired in the afternoon.
really,
There
yes.
are certain, you have to sort of be mindful of that.
Are there certain foods that just tank you?
I mean, God, I love a pasta. I'll eat the hell out of a burger, and
Right.
those are always my choices, and then I'm so tired and
Yeah.
so full. So
So
actually
we've
when we
done what
went
we can
back,
do. Great. Exactly. Let's wrap it up.
this the first 3 weeks of season 3 were my, the first time I was back in an in-person room for, years. And so I was like ordering lunch and I just made the rule that I'm going to do a salad every day because it's going to like keep me awake. Yeah, no big pasta bakes.
You can't do the big pasta. I mean, we love them, but it sounds like a mac and cheese would just get everybody under the writers' room desks if there is a unified one anymore, or if we're all zooming in. But
Yeah.
everybody taking a big old nap and just
Yeah,
thinking on it, sleeping on it.
exactly.
Um, I wanted to congratulate you on your written by credits this year. The written by credits, those are always very exciting. We love what that means in the world of residuals and all of those things, but also the pride of having those. And I wanted to mention you've been able to have episodes this year that involve two of our favorite humans, Katie Locke O'Brien and
Mhm.
Kimmy Gatewood, who are both incredible directors.
Yes.
What is it like to collaborate with a director when you've been in the writer's room over 3 seasons, and people come in and sort of guest host the episode or the show for the day. What is that like? And what are the sort of what's the etiquette of protecting the characters as you have those conversations?
Yeah, definitely. First of all, yet another thing we're fighting for with our contract with the
Yeah.
Writers Guild is ensuring that writers get to be on set. Um, COVID has obviously made things challenging for a lot of reasons, and there were fewer people on set for good reason. I think that's changing a little bit. I actually did not. We film in Montreal. I did not go to set for season 2, but I will be going for season 3, and we'll get to work more closely with the director. But it's interesting because, like, on paper, that is such a challenging ask of like, okay, you have like the showrunners have like birthed this baby essentially, and all of the writing staff are essentially the nannies of this of this baby. Is how I
Great way
feel
to put
about
it.
writing scripts. Is like, you're not writing it for yourself. You're helping this process that was started by someone else. And I feel like directors, it's the same thing. They're coming in, they want to bring their own style and thoughts and expertise to the work, but the train's in motion, and we're often behind schedule. And so
Mhm.
I think it's really important to have those conversations at the beginning of the process of like, hey, just things to like keep in mind about the rules of this show. And I don't know, being open to what people can bring creatively within those rules. I mean, Ghost is very interesting because we have to be incredibly careful. You can never see a ghost in a mirror. Like even just like sightline of like
Oh yeah.
where people look when they talk. And that especially is true for our guest actors because they are used to addressing everyone standing in front of them.
Yeah.
And they really have to pretend that those people are not there. And so directors have been really helpful with that and like preserving the rules in the world of the show. But
Mhm.
it's exciting, but I imagine as a director, that's also stressful to just come in to something that's already in motion.
Yeah. One of our guests, I believe it was Chris Lefko, had said it's sort of like being the host of a party where the invitations have been sent out and you're arriving and you're hosting, but you don't know anyone yet.
Yeah.
Right? Unless you do come back, and that does happen where people say, "Oh, this was a really great partnership. This person really understood the show," and they can come back and they then have a shorthand with everybody that they've been working with before. But it's um, definitely showing up to a party that's already unfolding, and there's already rules, and there's these are the ways in which you could break the show, I guess, right, by this angle or by seeing somebody in a mirror where you shouldn't be. So everybody's probably got to be looking out for those points along the way. But congratulations again on getting those written bys. I know they're always joyous moments to be able to that's when you can have the pasta, right?
Yeah,
You
exactly.
definitely
Exactly.
get the written by. And would you normally, if everything were in order the way that we want it to be in an ideal world, would it just be the writer who wrote the episode and the upper tier showrunner and that echelon of people? Would it be the whole writing staff, or has it been on some shows?
I think in the multicam world, like No Good Nick was a multicam, and we all were going to rehearsals and obviously show night. We were all on the floor for show night and punching jokes as they were happening. And then in that case, it's just the writer and showrunners who are in like the meetings
Hmm.
and sort of figuring out, there's like a tone meeting and just making sure, like going through the script, making sure that, all of the separate departments, like everything's sort of accounted for. Everyone's on the
Hmm.
same page. When it comes to single cam, again, it's also different if we're shooting in LA or elsewhere. I mean, it's been really hard for our showrunners, Joe Port and Joe Wiseman, to split time between the writer's room and then being on set in Montreal and having to like always trust the other group that like, things are going the way they're supposed to go. And I know that even for Ghost, the past couple of years, people are not necessarily on set for their episode. And because it's so collaborative, I feel like that's okay. We're all
Hmm.
sort of looking out for the show together. And so there is a little less ownership in that sense when it's your episode.
Hmm.
But I think the positive to that is you are a part of all of the episodes.
Right.
Like, you know,
Right.
you're really involved in all of it. And so, yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you for all of that. That's been incredible. And it's been great hearing what you've been doing, how you've gotten to where you are. I do want to make sure that everybody that's watching knows that Emily is going to be sharing a lecture with us. You can sign up for it on catalyststories.org/classes-events. That class will be on good bones, and that's structuring your pilot for success. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you will cover in that class?
Yeah. So, I when I graduated from NYU, I really felt that I had maybe made a mistake. I was like, all my homework was like watching Breaking Bad, and like it just didn't. I was like, okay, well, that's my degree. But then when I got to LA, I realized, oh, I did really learn something. I really learned how to like structure a script. So I started teaching classes, mostly to friends that were sort of trying to figure that out just by watching pilots, which is also helpful. But this is going to be like a 2-hour lecture. It's kind of like a crash course in structuring your pilot, making sure that you're accountable to story, that all the scenes in your pilot belong there, or moving the story forward. And it's just kind of based on what I learned at NYU.
Absolutely. Well, we're so excited to have you back. That'll be on July 7th, and we're super excited to host you in that. Any parting words of advice for folks who are feeling restless in this moment about the state of the industry and where it's going? Any
Yeah.
words of advice for I'm trying to think in terms of just feeling restless, feeling like there's nowhere to get right now, right? Everything is paused. Everyone who is working is on pause. Everyone who wants to work is on pause. What advice would you share with people who are feeling that restlessness and that itch right now?
I would say use this time to go out and have experiences that you can then write about later. This is like a good time to like take a trip or take a class or do something you wouldn't normally do. Keep writing, always write. That's always something you'll be able to return to, and it will add some structure if you want it to this time. And then also, if you feel comfortable, I know some of the groups have been kind of big. COVID's still a thing. If you feel comfortable going to picket lines to meet folks,
Yeah,
it's a great time to sort of network and get to know folks, because we're all sort of in this same boat together. And that includes
absolutely.
like pre-WGA are 100% welcome at pickets. And it's a great way to meet folks if you're comfortable.
Absolutely. And also I think it's a great time for the development of people's passion projects, right?
Mhm.
Where if I'm in SAG, which I am as a sister union member, I can go and support you and we can talk about the thing we want to make, when we are done with our next projects. We can talk about those collaborations or see who we have in common. It's not everything needs to be paused. Certainly the energy of community is what's keeping everybody going
Yep.
at this moment. So it's a great time to make those connections and to reach out to others and to be figuring out how you can support. Certainly, we're glad to have you here and glad to be able to share your lecture with everybody coming up on the 7th.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time. It's been an
Thank
absolute
you.
whirlwind I feel like it went by in 4 seconds, but it was
Well,
such a delight. You're
thank
so
you. Thank
welcome.
you. Such a
Thank you
treat.
for being here, and thank you everybody for watching. If you have any questions, we will do our best to answer them later in the comments. But take care, be well, and hopefully the strike will resolve very soon.
Yes.